Hi ladies, and welcome to the Civil War audio lecture. I feel like I needed a theme song. Next time. So to begin, take out your Civil Wars battle sheet, also your Supreme Court cases sheet. Both of those are also in your Unit 4 folder on Google Drive. Please keep careful track of all of your questions as I go through what we're going to discuss today, so I can get to any of your questions the first day back. So today we're going to be covering some more of the social side, the pros and cons, or the advantages and disadvantages of going into the war for each side, as well as more of the military aspects. So we left off with the fall of Fort Sumter, and after the fall of Fort Sumter, we're going to have 11 states that had seceded from the Union. We have the North fighting again for the preservation of the Union and upholding the Constitution as they saw it. And the South, not, of course, fighting for slavery per se, but the larger rights that were being threatened now or in the future by the North. So we're going to have some advantages and disadvantages. So I know we did some of this in class, but it never hurts to have a bit of a refresher. So we're going to have to mobilize our resources for war. The North, of course, had the most industrial and manufacturing capacity with 85% of factories on northern soil. The North also is going to have the majority of railroad lines, which is going to be key to interconnectedness and troop movement. We had 75% of the railroad lines. And the North is going to also have the largest amount of physical banks. So 75% of United States money is literally sitting right there in the North. And then, of course, the population advantage. But in 1861, there were 22 million Northerners versus 9 million Southerners, and approximately 4 million of those 9 million Southerners were slaves. So it's going to be then a huge population advantage for the North. The disadvantages of the North aren't quite so many. One, they're fighting the offensive, and which is always harder to do, and also that the rest of the world had nothing really to gain from a northern victory. In fact, it would have been ideal for England, France, for the North to have failed, so they wouldn't be able to manufacture the cotton coming from the South. The Southern cotton then would have gone directly back to England, which England was the world's #1 textile producer at the time. So there wasn't going to be a lot of eagerness to go in and fight the Civil War and help the North. The South is going to have a few advantages, not many. The first big one being that the South found its commanders early. Robert E. Lee and Stonewall Jackson were both found in early of 1862. And we're going to have early success in many battles for the southern side. Honestly, if Lee and Jackson hadn't been the commanders that early, it's highly doubtful that the South really would have ever gained much momentum. The other advantage is that the South was fighting defensively. It's always easier to fight a defensive war. And they were fighting to protect their liberty. Now, the North also thinks that they're fighting to protect their liberty, so it's not going to be a huge advantage for the South, but this is why the South is going to call this the Second American Revolution. Also, they were really hopeful that England would come to their aid because England would want their cotton. However, after 1863 and the issuance of the Emancipation Proclamation, that wasn't going to happen because in 1863, slavery finally is going to become one of the more moral issues of the war, and England had already outlawed slavery. Their disadvantages are huge. They're facing a richer, more populous industrial opponent, and it's a really hard time. It's not an easy job to get a new government organized and running while fighting a war. Remember, we talked about this in the American Revolution, but the South isn't going to be able to pull it off as we did that first time.